I bought a house with my own money, then my girlfriend tried to take half by dragging in lawyers and her parents. I've been with Carla for 3 years now. Around 2 years ago, we decided to move in together and ended up in this tiny, rundown apartment. It wasn't much honestly, it was a dump, but we made it work. We split everything evenly, 50-50ths, even though I earn more than she does. I work in tech and have been steadily moving up in my career. Carla has a decent job too, but her income doesn't quite match mine. Still, I never made a fuss about it. It felt fair enough. About 8 months ago, we started talking seriously about buying a house. Rent prices were getting out of control, and we felt like we were just burning money every month. I'd been saving up for a while and had a solid credit score, so I figured I could qualify for a mortgage. Carla was on board and really excited. We were going to open houses together on weekends, scrolling through listings online like we were mapping out our future. It actually felt kind of magical at first. But then things started getting complicated, and to this day, I'm not sure if I handled it perfectly, but I honestly think I did the right thing. Once we got serious about making offers, I went to a mortgage broker to get pre-approved. They ran the numbers and told me something unexpected: if I applied by myself, I'd qualify for way more than if Carla and I applied together. The reason? Her student loans and a lower credit score, not terrible, just not as high as mine. The broker said that together we might get approved for around $350,000. But if I applied alone, I could go up to $500,000. That kind of difference opened up way better options, nicer homes in safer neighborhoods with better schools. I brought all this up to Carla, and at first, she got upset. She didn't like the idea of me being the only one on the mortgage. She said it felt off, like she'd have no legal claim to the house. I explained that while my name would be the only one on the deed and mortgage, that didn't mean it wasn't our home. We'd be living in it together, building a life just like we always planned. I also pointed out that with her on the loan, we'd be limited to older homes that probably needed repairs or places in sketchier areas. After laying it all out, she seemed to get it and agreed that I should apply a loan. So I went ahead and did it. I put down $75,000 from my own savings, money I'd been working on setting aside for years. I also covered the inspection, the closing costs, and all the other expenses that come with buying a house. Carla chipped in for a few smaller things, like renting the moving truck and getting some new furniture, but the bulk of the cost landed on me. We ended up finding a perfect house for $420,000 in a great area. Nice schools, a big backyard, everything we wanted. I got approved with no issues, and Carla was totally involved throughout the process. We picked everything out together, and she was just as excited about it as I was. Now here's where things started to shift, and maybe I'm the bad guy here, but I don't think so. When we got to the closing, Carla brought up wanting to be added to the deed. I reminded her that we'd already agreed I'd be the only one on the mortgage and deed because it made more financial sense. She said she understood that part, but thought she'd still be added to the deed for legal ownership. I told her that didn't really make sense. She didn't contribute to the down payment or qualify for the loan. Legally owning half the house without putting anything into it financially didn't feel right to me. She's living there, and of course it's her home too, but ownership is something else. If we ever broke up, she could walk away with no debt, no risk, but still own half the house? That just didn't sit well with me. She went quiet and said she needed time to think about it. I honestly thought that would be the end of it. It all made sense once I laid it out. But over the next few weeks, she kept bringing it up, saying it felt like I was treating her more like a renter than a real partner. That was never my intention. I never asked her to pay rent. We still split groceries, bills, and day-to-day stuff like always. Then, about a month after we moved in, she told me she wanted to start putting money toward the mortgage, thinking that would somehow earn her a share of the equity. I had to explain that it doesn't work that way. The mortgage is in my name, based on my credit and income, so I'm the one legally on the hook. If she wanted to contribute more, I suggested she focus on her student loans first since they're charging her more in interest anyway. That's when things really blew up. She said I was being controlling and acting like she was just some roommate instead of my girlfriend. She accused me of using the house to make her feel insecure and unsure about our relationship. But that's not what I was doing at all. I was just trying to be smart about the legal and financial stuff. I told her that this house didn't change anything between us. We were still partners, still building a life together. But she kept saying I was leaving her out of the big decisions and ignoring her feelings. I didn't see it that way. We chose the house together. She was part of every step, just not the financial ones. After that argument, the tension really started to grow. She began acting weird about money, like tracking exactly what she spent on groceries and making offhand comments about how she was paying to live in my house. I told her that was ridiculous. She never acted like that when we were renting and splitting everything. Then, just last month, she brought up something new. Her parents had offered to give her $50,000 so she could be added to the deed. They're well off, and she thought this would be a way to officially have some ownership. I told her that was generous of them, but the timing just didn't work. I'd already bought the house, paid the down payment, and assumed all the risk. Giving her ownership now would rewrite everything. And here's where I might sound like a jerk, but I'm just being honest. I don't really want to be financially tied to her parents. If they give her money for the house, then what happens if we break up? Do I owe them something? Do they get a say in what we do with the property? It just seemed like a mess I didn't want to step into. That pushed Carla over the edge again. She said I clearly didn't want to commit to her because I wouldn't put her name on the deed. Which, frankly, felt insulting because I literally bought us a house. How's that not commitment? But apparently, in her mind, the deed was some kind of loyalty test. I told her, if anyone should be worried about commitment, it's me. The truth is, if Carla and I ever break up, she can just pack up and go while I'm left holding the bag on a $400,000 mortgage and possibly a house I can't even afford on my own. She says that's exactly why she wants her name on the deed, so she has some form of security too. But that doesn't really make sense to me. She never took on any of the financial risk in the first place. We've been going back and forth on this issue for months now, and it's starting to wear on our relationship. Anytime we argue, no matter what it's about, she circles back to the house. She throws around accusations, saying I'm trying to control her financially, like I'm some kind of power-hungry landlord. Just last week, she told me she'd talked to her sister, who apparently thinks I'm being selfish. According to her, couples should split ownership of major purchases, especially a house. But her sister doesn't know the full story. She doesn't know that Carla couldn't get approved for a mortgage on her own, or that I fronted the entire down payment, or that I'm the one shouldering all the financial responsibility. It's easy to give advice when you're not the one at risk. I love Carla. I want us to work. But I also have to protect what I've worked for. It took years of saving, building good credit, and planning to be in a position to buy a home. It doesn't feel fair that just because we're in a relationship, she should automatically get half the ownership. Maybe I'm looking at this too logically, but I've seen what happens when couples split and there's property involved. Things can get ugly fast, and I'm not interested in putting myself through that. If we stay together long term, if we get engaged or married, maybe then we can revisit this. But for now, I think the current setup makes the most sense. I get why she's upset. I understand that not being on the deed might make her feel uncertain about the future. But I also think she's being unrealistic about what she's entitled to. Just because we share a living space doesn't mean she's entitled to everything I've purchased. That's not how relationships work, not healthy ones, anyway. So, am I the bad guy here? Update 1: After I shared my situation and read through the comments, I actually started feeling a bit guilty. A lot of people made me second guess myself. Some said I was being unfair, and for a moment, I thought maybe they had a point. I was even gearing up to talk to Carla about possibly working out a compromise, maybe finding a way for her to feel more secure. But then yesterday morning, right before I left for work, something felt off. Carla was acting jittery, like she had something weighing on her. I asked her what was going on, and she said there was something important she needed to tell me. Instantly, I got that gut feeling, like, here comes the bad news. And I was right. She admitted she'd been speaking to a lawyer about the house, behind my back. And not just for general advice either, she'd been actively looking into her legal options. She said the lawyer told her that because we're not married, she has no legal claim to the house, even if she helps with utilities or groceries. She already knew that, but apparently, the lawyer suggested she might be able to make a case for equity if she could prove she contributed to mortgage payments or home improvements. I asked her why she would go to a lawyer instead of just coming to me, and she said she wanted to understand her legal standing before we had any more discussions. But what really hit me was when she said the lawyer told her that if she started paying toward the mortgage and we had some sort of written agreement, she could potentially claim partial ownership down the line. So basically, she was exploring legal ways to wedge her way into ownership of a house I bought and paid for. I asked her outright if that's what she was planning, and she claimed she was just gathering information. But let's be real, no one hires a lawyer just to casually browse their options. I told her it felt like a betrayal. She went behind my back to talk to a lawyer about our personal situation and never said a word. She argued it wasn't betrayal, just a professional consultation, but if that were true, why keep it a secret? It's clear she knew I wouldn't be okay with it. Then she dropped another bomb: her parents weren't just offering to help her financially with the house. They were also willing to loan her money to pay for legal representation if she needed to fight for ownership. That was the final straw. I told her this whole situation was exactly why I didn't want her name on the deed to begin with. She was literally trying to find a legal loophole to take part of what I worked so hard for. She swore that wasn't her intention, but come on, and the facts say otherwise. We had a massive blowout. She packed a bag and left to stay with her sister for the night. And honestly, I was relieved. I needed space to think, and I couldn't even look at her without feeling furious. She came back this morning, apologized for not telling me about the lawyer, but doubled down and said she still felt the arrangement was unfair. She wanted to come up with some sort of agreement where she could earn equity in the house going forward. I told her absolutely not. Especially not after everything that just happened. She accused me of being unreasonable again and said she just wanted to feel secure in our relationship and in the home. But I pointed out that she felt secure enough to start consulting lawyers and preparing for legal action behind my back. That's not how partners operate. What really stings is that she was planning this legal angle for who knows how long, while acting like we were still having open, honest conversations. If she'd come to me in the beginning and been upfront about everything, maybe we could have found some middle ground. But now, I don't trust her. I can't. Reading the responses to my original post helped me see I wasn't crazy for being cautious. Everyone's saying I should just add her to the deed to make her happy. Well, now you see what happened the second I even started thinking about it. She lawyered up. There's no way I'm putting her on the deed. I'm not entering into any equity agreement either. If she wants a house, she can do what I did: save up, build credit, and buy one herself. She's not going to sneak her way into ownership of mine through legal tactics. I know it probably sounds cold, but I genuinely feel like I dodged a massive bullet. Imagine if I had added her to the deed months ago and then found out she was this willing to involve lawyers and her family in something so personal. I'd be tangled in a nightmare trying to sort it all out. Carla's still at her sister's place. I have no idea if she's coming back. And honestly, a part of me hopes she doesn't. I still love Carla. I really do. And a part of me wants to believe we can make this work. But lately, I've started wondering if this entire situation has revealed who she really is when things don't go her way. Maybe this is just how she operates when she feels out of control. I don't know. What I do know is that I'm not changing my mind about the house. Update 2: Carla came back home 3 days after staying with her sister. At first, it seemed like things might get better. She apologized again for going to the lawyer and told me she wanted us to work things out without dragging anyone else into it. For a moment, I thought maybe we were finally getting past the drama. I was wrong. Almost immediately, she started acting strangely about money. Every single expense she made for the house, no matter how small, she documented. She was taking pictures of receipts, writing down how much she spent on dish soap or light bulbs, and calculating her share of the utility bill down to the cent. I asked her what she was doing, and she said she was keeping track of her contributions just in case it mattered later. I told her that sounded paranoid, and she shot back that her lawyer had advised her to document everything if she ever wanted to claim any kind of equity in the house. So even though she'd apologized for going behind my back to speak to a lawyer, she was still secretly following their advice. It felt like she was quietly preparing for battle while pretending things were fine. Then her parents showed up for a weekend visit and everything truly blew up. Carla was anxious the entire morning before they arrived, pacing around, checking her phone, barely speaking. When they got to the house, they didn't even try to hide what they were there for. Her dad sat me down and said they were concerned about Carla's lack of legal protection in the home. He said it wasn't right that she was living somewhere without any claim to it. I calmly explained that I qualified for the mortgage on my own, paid the entire down payment, and took on all the financial responsibility. But none of that seemed to matter to them. Her dad argued that because we're in a serious relationship, we should be building shared assets together. Then her mom jumped in and said they were willing to give Carla money so she could buy into the house. I told them what I had told Carla, that it doesn't work like that. You can't retroactively purchase ownership in something that was bought months ago. That's when her dad dropped the line that really ticked me off. He said that if I wasn't willing to add Carla to the deed, maybe I wasn't as committed as they thought. I told him that was ridiculous. I bought a house so we could build a life together. How is that not commitment? He kept pushing, saying that by keeping her name off the deed, I was treating her like a tenant. I pointed out that she doesn't pay rent, and we split all shared expenses like groceries and bills, so no, she's not being treated like a tenant. Then her mom added that they were afraid I'd one day kick Carla out and leave her with nothing. That really got under my skin. I've never done anything to suggest I'd abandon her like that. So I fired back. I said if they were so concerned about Carla's long-term stability, maybe they should help her buy her own place instead of trying to carve out a piece of mine. That's when things escalated fast. Her dad called me selfish and accused me of financially manipulating Carla. He said that if I truly loved her, I'd want her to feel secure. I told him that was completely unfair. I'd been nothing but generous. Carla's been living in a beautiful house, rent-free, enjoying every benefit of homeownership without carrying any of the risk. And through all this, Carla just sat there in silence, not saying a word while her parents tore into me. Eventually, I had enough. I told them that this was between me and Carla, and I didn't appreciate them getting involved in our private business, especially when they didn't even have all the facts. Her dad claimed they knew everything, that Carla had told them all about the situation. That's when it hit me, Carla had been venting to her parents the whole time. And not just venting, she'd clearly painted a version of me that made them feel like I was trying to control her or keep her powerless. After her parents left, Carla and I had a massive argument. I told her I couldn't believe she'd been sharing our private issues behind my back and making me out to be the bad guy. She said she just needed support because she felt like I wasn't listening to her concerns. But I called her out. Talking to a lawyer, bringing in her parents, and secretly building a paper trail isn't about asking for support. That's building a campaign. She insisted that wasn't her intention, but I could see it clearly. She was trying to surround me with pressure from her family, from legal advice, to force me into giving her what she wanted. Then she said something that made everything crystal clear. She told me that if we ever broke up, she'd walk away with nothing. No house, no assets, nothing to show for the years we spent together. I reminded her that she saved a fortune by not paying rent, that we've shared good times, built memories, and that relationships aren't supposed to be financial transactions. But to her, that wasn't enough. That's when it all clicked. This wasn't about fairness or feeling secure, it was about making sure she got something out of the relationship if it ended. She wanted a payout. She was trying to turn our relationship into a business arrangement where she walks away with a chunk of the property. I told her that's not how love works. That if she's already preparing for the breakup, maybe we're not meant to be together. She said that wasn't what she meant, but it sure sounded like it to me. She wanted my house to be her backup plan. Since then, things have been tense and quiet. We barely speak. She spends most of her time either in the bedroom or staying with her sister. When we do talk, it's only about groceries or splitting bills. And to be honest, I'm starting to feel like this relationship is already over. She didn't come to me and say she was feeling vulnerable or ask if we could figure something out. Instead, she went behind my back, consulted lawyers, got her parents involved, and tried to push me into a corner. That's not what a partner does. That's what someone does when they've already decided to stop being a partner and start being an opponent. Looking back, I'm honestly grateful I found all this out now, before we ever got married or had kids. At least this way, I've been able to protect myself, my finances, and avoid what could have been a drawn-out legal mess down the road. Update 3, Carla moved out yesterday. And while part of me is still processing everything and there's definitely a sadness about how it all ended, I also feel a huge sense of relief. I know I made the right choices, even when they weren't easy. I stuck to my gut, and I'm glad I didn't just cave to keep the peace, especially after so many people were telling me to just give in for the sake of the relationship. After my last update, things only went downhill. The tension between us kept building, and it became painfully clear we weren't going to get through this. Carla barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was always about the house. She kept pushing for some kind of legal agreement, something to lock in her share of the property. About a week ago, she handed me a document that she and her lawyer had apparently been working on behind the scenes. It was basically a cohabitation agreement that would give her partial ownership of the house based on any future payments she made toward the mortgage and even past expenses like groceries and utilities. I read the whole thing carefully, and honestly, it was completely skewed in her favor. It said she'd earn equity based not just on future contributions, but also on all the household bills she'd paid in the past, which, to be clear, were never mortgage-related. That alone was ridiculous, but it got worse. There was a clause buried in the agreement that outlined what would happen if we broke up. According to that, I'd either have to buy out her portion of the house based on current market value, or we'd have to sell it and split the profit. In other words, if she ever decided to cash out, she could force me to sell my own home. I told her flat out there was no way I'd sign something like that. And she responded by saying that if I wasn't willing to protect her financial future, she couldn't stay in the relationship. I told her I was done being painted as the villain just because I wouldn't give her ownership of something she hadn't actually invested in. She accused me of being unreasonable and said that all the couples she knew shared ownership of big purchases. But I reminded her that in most of those situations, both people contributed to the down payment or qualified for the mortgage together. That wasn't the case here. Then she said something that really hit a nerve. She claimed that she had invested 3 years of her life into our relationship and had helped me become the kind of man who could even afford a house. So she felt she deserved to benefit from that. I was stunned. She was essentially taking credit for my career progress and financial stability. I told her that was complete nonsense. I worked hard to get where I am. I put in the hours, built my credit, saved the money. Being in a relationship with someone doesn't entitle them to the rewards of your work. She tried to backpedal, saying that wasn't what she meant, but let's be honest, it absolutely was. She thought being a supportive girlfriend somehow earned her a cut of my home. And that's not how life works. You don't get someone's assets just for sticking around. Our final blowout happened shortly after that. She accused me of never truly committing to her, that I used her emotionally and physically while keeping all my assets separate. I told her if her definition of being an equal partner meant I had to hand over part of my property just to prove I cared, then we were clearly on different pages. After that, she started packing. She called her sister for help and spent the next 2 days moving out. The whole time, she acted like I'd kicked her out, but I didn't. That was her decision. The night before she left, she tried one last time to get me to change my mind. She said we could still fix things if I was willing to compromise on the house. I told her I loved her and had really hoped we'd make it, but I wasn't going to be manipulated into giving up ownership of something I paid for. And if she couldn't accept that, then maybe this just wasn't meant to be. After she left, I sat on the couch for a while and just felt empty. Sad, sure. But also calm. Because deep down, I know I dodged a bullet. Imagine if we had gotten married. What if later on she decided she deserved half of everything I own just because we shared a few years together? What if we'd had kids, and she used them as leverage to demand even more in a divorce? Now I know the kind of person she really is when things don't go her way. And that knowledge, while painful, is invaluable. I can move forward and eventually find someone who wants to be with me for who I am, not for what I can offer them. Someone who values the relationship itself, not the property attached to it.